that people believe that their personality is fixed, that they have fixed limits of what they can become and how they can be. And this particularly shows up in ideas where people say, "Oh, that's just who I am."
Welcome to Season 1 of Beyond the Human, Remember Who You Are. I'm your host, Hazel Ray, singer-songwriter, experiencer, and messenger for those walking the edge of remembrance just like me. This is not a podcast to convince you of anything. Really, just take what resonates, leave what doesn't. This is a transmission, a call to the ones waking up, the ones remembering, the starseeds, the sensitives, the truth seekers, bridging science and spirit. If you're listening to this, you are ready. So let's remember together. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Human. I'm your host, Hazel Ray, and today I have the lovely Dale Smith, who is a certified and registered hypnotherapist. And we met at MBS in Sydney not too long ago, and I'd been asking the universe to bring in a hypnotherapist for me because I'm really passionate about what they offer in the wellness space, as well as, that link in my understanding of, the bridge between science and spirituality. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on that, Dale, before we start chatting, because when I'm on stage and I'm talking about this specific neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, one of the theories is that it's released in hypnotherapy, where we're focusing our attention really strongly on things and we're able to reach a brainwave called theta brainwave. Now, my audience and I have discussed this before, that in theta, we're in a highly suggestible state and we can create neural pathways a lot quicker. So I get really excited about the concept of hypnosis, because if we are able to get ourselves into that state, and whether it be listening to affirmations or whether it be working on, psychotherapy in that space. I know that's not what you do, but we can create neural pathways and lasting change so much faster. So thank you for coming on.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
We connected so strongly when I first sat down. We spoke for I think it was almost 45 minutes. I'm like, I've probably got to go because I've got so much to do, but it was really such a really beautiful connection. And I wanted to, for my audience, because I suppose we usually have the people out there that are like, hypnosis, I know what that means. It's a stage show. I'm going to sit there in an audience. So let's debunk the misconception of what hypnosis is not, and then that'll lead us into what hypnosis is.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for asking that, because so many people, I can't tell you the number of people that I speak to on a daily basis who have never had hypnotherapy before. And one of the very first questions that they ask me is, are you going to make me cluck like a chicken or stand on a table or rob a bank? Are you going to make me do something that I'm embarrassed about?
Wow.
And of course, the key there is encouraging those people to understand that we're not going to make them do anything that they aren't able to achieve and that they don't believe is in their own personality. So, if you encourage somebody to cluck like a chicken, it's usually because that person's an extrovert and they are looking to play up a little bit in front of an audience and have a little bit of fun with it, where most people would sit quite comfortably knowing that they were not going to be able to perform, so to speak. And when they realise that they're in their own private environment, because I visit my client in their own home for the most part, unless they want a Zoom or an online session. So it just helps them to feel more at rest and more peaceful about what they're going to achieve.
Yeah, because I've had hypnosis before when I was working through an eating disorder and I wanted to have a session. And I really had no idea what to expect the first time I was going. And there is no, there's not people in the room. It's just me one-on-one. And it's all about slowing down the mind and getting into a meditative state to start with. And then it's really just a script that my therapist was reading and going through, and we're doing a lot of visualization. And, I think that would be really exciting for me too, is not right this second, but before the end, is going through what an actual session looks like for people when they were to come and potentially see you. So what do you necessarily define hypnosis as? What is the definition that you would put to the audience?
So hypnotherapy is a deeply relaxed state where we encourage the client to go into a deeper level of relaxation. So people think that they're going to have no control over their mind, and that's a misconception. You have complete control over your mind. So you could be doing a session in your lounge room with me at the other end of the online session, or I could be sitting in your sofa and the doorbell goes and you're quite capable of being in complete control, getting up and answering the door or whatever that may be. So people feel like they're terrified they're not going to have control of their own abilities. And that's totally not the case. But the other thing is that hypnotherapy is it is probably the most gentle way of helping to help somebody to heal their thought processes and to help them to overcome patterns that have developed in some cases from childhood that could have been built because they've had a narcissistic parent or a domineering parent who maybe used a simple throwaway comment one day like children should be seen but not heard, and puts them in a position where they feel like, as an adult, I'm still hiding away because I'm frightened that I'm going to upset somebody. And so hypnotherapy helps to turn off all those old belief patterns that are limiting and allows them to move forward in positive ways. So part of how I describe it for a client who may be unaware of completely of what hypnotherapy is talking about the fork in the road and knowing that this is a thought pattern that they've been developing over many years and heading down the one path of the road that's negative. And hypnosis helps to put that roadblock in the way so that they're really only thinking in the positive direction. So if it's quitting smoking, they no longer want or have the urge to smoke because we are putting a roadblock in the way of that old negative thought process.
Yeah.
Help a little?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I think what people don't realize too with hypnosis is that when you, if correct me if I'm wrong, but if they were to come and see you for a session, you actually have to sit down with them and understand what are those cyclical thought patterns, maybe potentially where did they come from? Is it that you identify that, and then is it that you write a script from that you're going to go into when, is that how it works?
Yes, definitely. So we would always have a consultation. For me, my consultations can last anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. If somebody really needs to have the help in bringing out the information that they've had stored away in little hidey spaces, in their imagination and in their subconscious for such a long time. So it gives me the opportunity to truly get to know that person, but it helps me to build a rapport with that person. And rapport is an enormous part of being able to do hypnosis with somebody, because if they don't feel a connection to you, and you mentioned that we had a good connection when we met at MBS, and that is very much a part of that, building that relationship, the rapport, so that that person feels completely relaxed with you and allows them to feel like they can truly open up. You're asking them to bare their soul in some cases, to really let you know where they're coming from. Because even if you're talking about, again, we'll use smoking as an example, if somebody's saying, I just want to quit smoking, but there's a reason why they started smoking, the root cause or the underlying factor of that need to start smoking could stem from childhood, or it could be that they simply were following a pattern that was drilled into them through a mother or a father or a grandparent who smoked, and they just think it's something that they can copy. But helping them to look back at where they found that, the need for it, and then being able to work on reducing and turning off that negative thought pattern is very much part of that consultation. So when they feel that they've got the comfort levels in their favour, then we can happily share that information and say, well, right now I know where I'm going to write your script from. And you know, you still need to go through that countdown into hypnosis, starting off with the beautiful deep breathing exercises that help them to relax and to settle and to effectively bring everything back into alignment. So I tend to use box breathing as the way for clients to settle in.
And for those of them, my audience who don't know, just give a little explanation of that, please.
Okay, so box breathing is breathing comfortably, not so deeply that your lungs expand and explode, but breathing in for a count of what could be 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, whatever's comfortable for them. So breathing in for a count of 3, holding for a count of 3, breathing out for a count of 3, and then holding again for a count of 3. And we might do that repetitiously for 3 cycles or 4 or 5. And when I can see that the client is starting to settle and their face is starting to relax and you can see the muscle change in their face, then we can start to go into the full induction.
I wanted to go back into the science a little bit of sort of the relaxation process that you were taking the audience through. And from my understanding is when we're sitting here and talking right now, we're in waking beta brainwaves, and that's like high functioning, quite high frequency brainwaves. And then when we do the breathing, we're able to slow our brainwaves down, and same with the closing our eyes, which increases the production of melatonin, which will automatically slow the brainwaves down into an alpha state. And the thing that I found out really interesting about the brain was when you go from beta to alpha, the analytical brain actually sits in between beta and alpha. So already you're getting your clients into that suggestible state of brain, meaning that your analytical brain that questions every little thing is able to be turned offline. And then the deeper relaxation with the spotlight that you spoke about and focusing on the body and everything, you're hoping to encourage them hopefully to get into sort of that deep meditation, that theta state, which I feel I get into after I do like a Wim Hof breath work, like a really deep Wim Hof. And for me, I get like certain visuals and things. I suppose you don't have an EEG on your client's brains to know what brainwaves they're in, but obviously it's a pretty fair indication that they're in a deep state of meditation. What is your indicator to you that, you know, when you said before, when they're at one with the universe, that kind of statement, what is your indicator that your clients have sort of reached this pivotal point where you're able to be like, you know, influential in suggestibility in their brain?
So that's different for a lot of people. It's not the same level for everybody, but I find, and let's talk general terms, I find that I will see differences in the client's face to start off with. So as you see them going through the different stages of that relaxing, let's call it a countdown, as you see them imagining that their eyes are really heavy and they're feeling really relaxed, you'll see that the little muscles around their eyes and the muscles around their nose and mouth will start to smooth out, because you hold yourself in a position that makes you feel like you. So as each person goes into their own level of relaxation, you will see that their mouth and their cheeks will start to go smooth. And then as they go through each level, their shoulders start to drop, and you physically see that process. And you'll see that the hands will go from, maybe a fist or a tense state, and then you'll see the hands drop away from wherever they've been holding themselves. So little bit by little bit, you see them reach those points, and then eventually you will start to hear a different level of breathing because they're not breathing at the same pace that they were when they first moved in.
So with that, which is something that you were leaning into before with meditation, could you say that hypnosis is a form of meditation? You're getting someone into a meditative state and then that's where the work is done? Like, is there like a parallel between them, or is it a different, how would you explain that?
It's different in that I use the term of a guided meditation for people who may not understand what it feels like. But let's say somebody you might talk to somebody who's been to a guided meditation session. And of course, it's because they're being guided into that relaxed state by the opportunities, of course, still counting them down. But in that meditative state, they're not being given the post-hypnotic suggestions to turn off the old negative practices and patterns and thought processes. So the meditation state is deeply relaxing, but hypnosis takes it beyond that. And then because you go from the relaxation, and then that's where you utilize your metaphors, which is the script, to be able to describe for the client that they might be, if they're going through a particularly stressful situation, you might be walking through a beautiful lush green bushland with tall trees and deep roots. The suggestibility of the tall trees with deep roots is that, of course, there's the strength and the connection to the earth so that they feel grounded. But you might be helping them to let go of a series of negative experiences. And so you might say that they could be walking down a lovely path in that bushland environment, and they see a fallen tree and they decide to sit down, and there's a lovely stream running past them, and they're enjoying the sound of the water, and then all of a sudden they see a leaf that falls from the tree and it lands on the path beside them, and they can attach the negative pattern. So let's say it's feelings of self-worth or a lack of self-worth, and we want them to let go of that feeling of lack. So they attach the feeling of lack to the leaf, and then they throw the leaf in the little river that's running past them, and then they're saying goodbye to the negativity of that particular situation.
We did a thing when I was telling you about my hypnosis session, because it was about an eating disorder. I was in a room in my visualization, and there were just like all these papers all on the ground, and they all had words of all the things that I would say to myself. And one by one, I had to like pick one up, scrunch it up and throw it in a big furnace. And then and I'd have to watch it burn and float away. And I had to take every single one of them and do this activity. So is that the same kind of concept?
Perfect. Absolutely. Exactly the same concept.
I remember when I came out of the session, I was kind of like, that is not what I was kind of expecting in my head. But on the same token, I think it did help with this negative self-talk. Another interesting session I had was with a clinical hypnotherapist, and we did this really quick 5-minute thing, which I would love to share with you. It might be interesting. He basically, firstly, we just got me to just slow down my breathing or whatever, and I had my eyes closed. And then he asked me to think of a memory where I felt shame. And I didn't have to share it. I just, had to think of the memory, and I had to conjure it up to like a 10. So really like feel into this shame feeling. And then he asked me if it was a shape, what shape would it be? And I said, it would be a triangle, and then he asked me what color it would be, and then I said it would be red, and then he asked me to change it into a ball, and then I had to change the color of it into something really calming, and that was a green ball. And then he actually got me to open my eyes up, and then he's like, can you visualize the ball in the room? And I could. And then he asked me to, I had a hallway at the time. He's like, can you roll it down the hallway? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm just doing it all in my mind's eye. And then he asked me to put it out on the road. And then he asked me to yell out things at me that the shame would say. So it started yelling at me, these things. And then he asked me to roll it down the hill until I can't hear it anymore. And I did that. And then he said, okay, now bring awareness to 3 things in your room that you've never noticed. And so I had to look around the room and like notice 3 things and come back. And then he's like, okay, now try and access that feeling of shame. And I cannot explain to you, I cannot for the life of me I can access the memory, but I can't access the shame. But all I see is this ball rolling, like it's interfered with that thought process. And my mind was blown right then and there. Obviously, like, I've studied neuroscience, and I just was like, this is profound. This is amazing work. And that's why I've been so obsessed. And I even thought about studying it, but, I've got all these other things going on. But, yeah, so do you ever use those kind of techniques, or does that – I see you nodding your head or whatever, but, like, yeah.
And for every person, you'll choose – a hypnotherapist will choose a different scenario for the different people that they work with. So each circumstance really does need to apply to that individual. So so my reason for telling you that is that I see a lot of people who come to me saying, I bought this recording online, or I bought this recording on Zoom or on YouTube or wherever, and they want to know why it's not working for them. And I have to help them to understand that each hypnotherapy session needs to be written specifically for them, because it has to tailor to the underlying factor or the root cause, as well as the other things that you interact with on a daily basis, to make it feel like it is specific to you.
How can you discuss that hypnosis can help with healing and trauma for people?
One of the sessions that I like to do, particularly with people who struggle with things that have come from a childhood situation, is to take them back to their childhood. But when we do it, again, in that script environment, in that metaphor, we're taking them to a point where it's somewhere really peaceful and calm. It's a happy place for them as a child. So whether it's a playground with swings and roundabouts and all of that sort of thing, or even just somewhere like a nice peaceful parkland setting, and you take them over, ask them to go over a bridge, for instance, and ask them to realize that there's something waiting for them on the other side of the bridge, and there's mist over the bridge, and you can't see who's there or what's there, and you're encouraging them in their mind to go over the bridge. And as they go through the mist dissipates, and they can see themselves as the 5-year-old or the 10-year-old or whatever that age may be. And then that encourages them to discuss with their childhood self whatever that particular issue might have been. And then you can encourage them to merge so they become whole again, and bring them back to this age group where they can then revisit what they were dealing with as a child. In hypnosis, people can learn a different pattern just by giving them a new pattern to think about. And so somebody who's been struggling with low self-worth because they thought mum and dad didn't care about us, and when you help them to see that that was an old generational comment that was meant to keep kids behaving, and then changing the thought about it and saying your parents made a comment that they probably heard as a generational thing themselves. So it may have been that for them, their parents may have also used a similar term. And so it almost adds to a generational trauma.
I wanted to say just on that, not that I'm going to go into depth, but
Mm,
the whole going back to the child, like, and doing that visualization process, I've done that in therapy just without
mm,
hypnosis as well. And they've done sort of studies on like quantum mechanics of that and potentially, you know, going back into the past and actually changing the present self by rewriting the past,
yeah,
essentially.
it's a reframe, basically, yes.
Whether it be,
Seeing
yes,
it
a
differently.
reframe in the mind, or if we're actually, you know, accessing, you know, because we're visualizing things in our mind, but, you know, we're not really 100% certain about what frequencies, what we're connecting with, and all those sorts of things. Like, I could go on for days about that, but
Mm,
when you're asking someone to then revisit that again or access that, they'll have the memory of what you've done with them,
mm.
and there's already a reframe, like you said, a new pattern that's been created. So I wanted to ask you, because I'm just conscious of time too. What are the most common things that people do come to you for hypnotherapy?
So they would be grouped in a certain number of opportunities. Habits, so things like smoking,
Mm,
drinking, dietary type patterns, sugar addiction, for instance, um, uh, portion control.
mm,
So when you're overeating and using your emotions to support your food habits, whether that's positive food habits or negative. Fears and phobias. So phobias are a thousandfold. People who have fear of chickens or pigeons, people who have fear of not being able to touch the bottom if they're in the pool or in the ocean. Guilt and grief are an
mm.
enormous number. I see quite a large number of people who deal with things like guilt and grief. Just a side story here, if I can.
Yeah.
I was working with a beautiful young lady who, um, at the age of about 30, had fallen pregnant with her second child. And she's such a wonderful person. I can't tell you what a lovely, positive person she is. But she had been told that her unborn baby was severely deformed
Oh.
and was being encouraged by the hospital to terminate the pregnancy. They believed that the issues that the child would have to live with if the baby made it to full term would be significant, and they didn't think that it was a reasonable thing to cope with.
Mm,
So what they did was went through with the termination, and without going into a lot of very, very sad detail, um, then carried the guilt and the grief of making that decision for about 7 years.
oh,
She
yeah.
could not cope with the fact that she had made that decision. She knew she had to make it. They had given her all the outcomes of what baby would be likely to experience. They knew that it was the right decision for them. She still could not come to terms with the decision she made and carried it
Mm,
with her for 7 years. And when she came to me about that, we obviously spoke several times. This was not a situation that we spoke about for half an hour and then went to it. We met a number of times, and then when we did do her script, we definitely went to turning off the guilt and the grief, and allowing her to understand that she didn't do anything wrong. She made a decision that was best for baby, first
mhm.
and foremost,
Yeah.
and then for her family and for their ability to cope as a young family. Um, and and after coming out of her session, she was in almost a totally elated state. She was laughing. She felt so comfortable. And during session, and while I don't tell people that they're going to be in tears through the session, because you don't want to make people feel sad and to relive those things. You can relive them without it being a negative experience. But she came back to the present time in such a positive way that she just felt like a new person. She said she just felt like she was floating on a cloud. And her husband came home from work about half an hour after we had finished session, and we'd been having a little debrief afterwards. And he just looked at her and he said, "You look like you've had a facial." And she said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You look 10 years younger."
Wow, I've got goosebumps. Can you see my hair?
Yeah, and I have to.
Oh.
She, without a doubt, would be, I'd say, one of my best success stories.
Did you only do one session with her and that's the outcome that you had, or did you have repeated?
In that particular situation, yes, one session. Now, when I say one session, that was building guilt, grief. It was building in a new level of confidence for her and helping her to overcome her levels of self-worth, because she felt like she was completely inferior in the world. And so all of the negative self-belief that you can imagine she carried all that time. So we were working on not just guilt and grief, but the guilt, the grief, and then reinstating her levels of confidence and self-esteem and self-worth.
Yeah, wow. You would feel just so proud of the work that you're doing in the world. And if anyone is listening and is deeply grieving and hasn't tried something like hypnosis, maybe I will be putting all of Dale's links to be able to book a session with her and get in contact with her at the bottom of my podcast, whether you're listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you are. So definitely get in touch, because that's super powerful. I mean, I've heard so many about, the addiction stories, and my stepdad, for example, he was a 2-pack a day man. One hypnosis session has not picked up a smoke, like just instantly. And I wanted to talk before we end up finishing, because I find that this is really important, because belief. Do you feel that, like, what role does belief play in the work of hypnosis? Do people have to believe in what you do? Do you have skeptics come in? I've done some research about apparently that like 10% of the population can't actually be hypnotized. So how do you work with that concept?
So I think the first thing, it's important that you have rapport with your client, because without that rapport, without that connection, as you said when we first started, that's a very big part of it. The person that you're working with, the client, needs to understand that they are going to be successful. If they're skeptical, you can still help them to overcome whatever it is that they've come to you for. But in every case and in every session, I always do what we call a suggestibility test. It helps the client to see that they can be hypnotized, and it helps me to see how quickly they'll take that suggestion. So a suggestibility test might be something as simple as encouraging them to imagine that they can taste the slice of a cut lemon. So you can imagine what the taste of a cut lemon would be. You can imagine the natural reaction of the squinting, and you can taste the lemon, or helping them to imagine that their hand is stuck to the table that they're sitting at, and they can't take their hand away, and it doesn't matter how hard they try. They just cannot take their hand away. Their hand is stuck fast to the table.
Have you had people that haven't passed the suggestibility test before, and you've sort of said probably won't work, or most people that you've worked with?
Every person that I've worked with has been suggestible. Some of them take a little longer to accept the suggestion.
We've had a few technical glitches in this little session, but I'm just so grateful that Dale is still here with me. But we're coming to the end of the session, and I wanted to ask her the question that what's one belief about human potential that you think is outdated? If you have an answer, some ideas, some thoughts, I'd love you to share.
Yeah, so I think one particular one is that people believe that their personality is fixed, that they have fixed limits of what they can become and how they can be, and this particularly shows up in ideas where people say, "Oh, that's just who I am," or "I'm not a confident person, so that's just me." And that shows up very much as their identity, and that it's permanent and hardwired. And of course, that's not actually the case. Obviously, with hypnotherapy, we are in a position where we can help them to understand that those are old learned patterns. They're not their actual personality. So their identity has been maintained by repetition, by people like, as if we go back to that the parental comment, children should be seen but not heard, which adds to that lack of confidence in the child, and that carries through. So what it's doing is helping us to help them to know that that's an essence that we can change. It's not their personality, and it's not specifically them. It's just that over time, someone has been telling them continuously that that's who you are. So those identity stories are reinforced over time.
And on that, children are in a theta brainwave pattern from 0 to 7, and that's when the subconscious mind is built. So if they're the things that you're being told as a child, then they become your inner core belief system that, yes, that we come to see you later on in life to be like, I don't know why I believe this. So then we go back into the same brain state that you first learned these things, and we rewire it. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. Your personality is a pattern. It's not a prison.
I love that. And just one more thing I want to say before we finish up. I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like every 9 months, every cell is replaced in our body. So it's like if you think that you're the same person, you're biologically not even the same human after 9 months,
That's
And so I
exactly
think
right.
about people who have got, negative habits that they continue or things that they do that are not so good for their body. I'm like, you change it in 9 months, your cells don't even know who that was.
Absolutely. And look, the thing is that you can interrupt an automatic loop by giving, when your body has gone through that change, of course, your mind can go through that change as well. So if you understand that somebody's following a loop or a pattern or an impulse, you can change that even by just encouraging them to change one thought about themselves. So they're constantly talking negatively about themselves, then ask them to think, what is that? What is one thing that you would like to change about how you think about yourself?
With the brain, they're like highways. And when we've driven the highway a million times, that is a really strong connection. And now we're asking it to go not that way now, we want to go this way, but it's a very
Absolutely.
weak path, and you've got to slowly build its strength so this one falls away and that becomes the new path that we go down. No,
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I'm
Yeah.
just so grateful for you coming on today and being vulnerable and sharing all about hypnosis and explaining some of your client stories. I think my audience will really find some new insight into potentially what hypnosis is, why it might be useful for them. And if they would like to book a session with you, what should they do?
So they can contact me by my mobile. They can contact me by email. So
Pop it
they
down
can
below.
reach out. Excellent. So reach out to me via mobile, either text or call. If I'm in a session with somebody, then I will return their message. If they send me an email, I'm more than happy to respond. And they can follow me on Facebook and Instagram and send me a DM through either of those opportunities as well.
I love it. Well, again, as I
I've really
finish,
enjoyed it today.
bless. I've really enjoyed it too. I find it so fascinating. I still have so many questions, but I know time-wise, we end up going well over someone's car trip. So, yeah, anyway, maybe another
It's
time we
been
can come on and we can talk about some more things. But if you are still listening, please, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to my channel. If you like what I'm sharing, please send this information to other people who might like to hear it. If you're on Spotify, press the follow button. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, also do the same. I'm really grateful. I always finish with a song. So today I think I'm going to share Find the Light at the end of this. So stay around for that. Mwah. Take care, Dale. Bye.
Thank you so much, Hazel. Take care. I really enjoyed it.
To take a look in one's heart, you must lose your head. To take a look in one's heart, you must observe what is said. You're not what's in your mind. Your true essence you must find. To find the essence of within, stop the ego, then now's what we're in. To find the essence of within, stop praying, 'cause God's listening. You have the love that you seek. You won't find it in others you meet. Find the light. Just trust and you'll find the light. The darkness can't hide the light. Be still and just feel the light. Find the light. Have faith and you'll find the light. No pain can conceal the light. Be brave and become the light. To find the keepers of your soul, you must fall down at your knees. To find the keepers of your soul, you must be dying within. Your very last breath you must face. Only there will the light find its place. Find the light. Just trust and you'll find the light. The darkness can't hide the light. Be still and just feel the light. Find the light. Have faith and you'll find the light. No pain can conceal the light. Be brave and become the light. Become the light. Find the light. Don't fear the